Hello, I'm Richard with EV4U Custom Conversions, and welcome to another episode in our Karmann Ghia Repair, Maintenance, and Improvements video series. Last time we talked about removing the shift rod, and I mentioned at the end of that video that we'd be doing the rear disc brakes. Well, that didn't happen, been busy. So the rear disc brakes will be saved for another time, another episode. But in today's episode, we're going to go over the removal of the transaxle. We've kind of done some things leading up to that, and so in this episode we're actually going to remove the transaxle. We're going to do that because we finally got the replacement one in. Took a little longer than we had anticipated, but it's here, and so now we can make the swap and send our core back. So anyway, a little review of the process to remove the transaxle, and so that you have a little better big picture understanding in this video. We're not going to talk about reinstalling it in this video, just the removal. So, first off, we removed the negative battery cable. And we're going to go through this. It'll be pertinent if you have a gasoline-powered vehicle or electric, as in our case. So we're removing the negative battery terminal from our auxiliary battery, from the starting battery if you have a gasoline powered one. You want to place the shift lever into either first or third gear. You remove the inspection plate that covers the coupler that goes from the shift lever or the shift rod to the transaxle. And in our case, remember, we had to remove the batteries, which are sitting over here, because the battery box sits right on top of that cover plate. On a normal vehicle, on a Bug, you just lift up the back seat. You would have already done that to get to the battery cable. On the Karmann Ghia, it's either the back seat or a package shelf, as in the case of the 74. And then you're going to remove a bolt that connects the shift rod coupler to the transaxle input or gear selection shaft. We showed you that in a previous video, the last one. And then to disconnect that coupling from the transaxle, you're going to move the shift lever to either second or fourth gear, and that should pull those two apart. And then you're going to want to drain the fluid from the transaxle, and to do that, this is typically what you'll want to use. It's a large Allen key, and I don't remember the exact size, but that's how you remove that bottom drain plug to drain the transaxle. It's also what you use to remove the filler plug to fill your new one or rebuilt one. Then once the transaxle fluid's been drained, you can raise the rear of the vehicle and support it on jack stands. But before you do that, you want to chock the front wheels so that the vehicle won't roll or go anywhere. I'm not a big fan of jack stands. I typically use jack stands in conjunction with a jack just to play it safe. We typically use ramps because they're better support, but in this case we've got it on ramps right now, but we're going to raise it a little bit higher off the ramps and support it with jack stands, because we're going to want to move the wheels in order to remove the bolts from the constant velocity joints. In this video, we're only talking about the axle shaft, the IRS type of transaxle. And to do that, again, you need another tool. This one is a splined tool. I don't remember what size it is, and it's not marked on here. I've had this one for probably 40 years or very close to it. So anyway, this is what will remove those bolts. There's 6 per constant velocity joint, and they're at an angle. In order to get kind of clearance with the boot, you're going to rotate that, and you'll get 2 at a time, rotate the wheel 2 more at a time. And on the transaxle, you'll be getting the top ones off on that side. If you're removing the joint on the wheel side, it'd be on the bottom. But to remove the transaxle, we only need to remove the constant velocity joints on the inboard constant velocity joints that attach to the transaxle itself. And then we take a plastic bag and cover that joint to keep it clean. In our case, we do that not just to keep the joint clean, but to keep the joint from getting us dirty, as we're going to replace the constant velocity joints while we're here, and that'll all be new and fresh. And then kind of got ahead of myself, but you could do it either way. The other thing you want to do at this point in time is remove the engine, or in our case, the motor, and then do the CV joints typically, but you could do it either way, no big deal. Checking my notes, make sure I don't forget anything here. And then, so once the constant joints are disconnected, you got them covered, you can take a wire or wire ties or something and hold them up out of the way, so they're not just hanging there and getting in the way. Next, you'll want to disconnect the clutch cable, and there's 2 places where we're going to do that. One is where the adjustment wing nut is, where the clutch cable attaches to the transaxle at the shift fork lever. Need to remove that. And then there's the bracket where the clutch cable is mounted to the side of the transaxle. The 2 nuts there to remove. Remove those, remove that bracket, put the nuts back in place. Then you also want to disconnect the starter. In our case, there isn't a starter. We don't have to worry about disconnecting the starter, but if you have an internal combustion setup, you want to remove the wires from the starter, not the starter itself, but just remove the wires. You can remove the starter, but it's not necessary. You can do that after it's out of the vehicle, the transaxle's out of the vehicle, and be a little easier then. But you do have to disconnect the electrical connections, the wire from the battery to the solenoid, and the ignition wire to the solenoid. And then you're going to want to disconnect the wires that go to the reverse switch on the transaxle, and then there's a ground strap that you'll want to disconnect. So that should be all of the peripheral stuff disconnected from the transaxle. So then next, what you're going to want to do is put a floor jack underneath the transaxle. And what we're going to do at that point, once we've removed the constant velocity joints, we'll lower the car back off the jack stands, put it back down on our ramps, get those nasty jack stands out of the way. And then you remove the front transaxle nuts off the front transaxle mount. This is a new front transaxle mount. They vary a little bit. This is for this late Karmann Ghia. And then once you detach the front of the transaxle, you want to remove the transaxle carrier bolts, which are on the rear. And we're going to show you all this. I'm just going over it you know, kind of an outline here to start with, and we'll show you some of this. And then once you remove those front carrier bolts, or rear carrier bolts, then we'll be able to move the transaxle and the jack to the rear and lower it down and remove it from the vehicle. So we'll go ahead and do some of that now and show it to you on camera. And then after we've gotten the transaxle out of the vehicle, I'm going to share with you some little tidbits. I've got a factory manual on these vehicles, and you're looking over the factory manual, there's all sorts of interesting statistics and facts about them that, you know, we typically don't think about, or maybe you're not aware of. So I thought I'd just share a few of those with you at the end of the video. So stay with us. Okay, just showing you again with the inspection plate removed, and we've disconnected the shift rod to the transaxle shift rod. Kind of dark in there, but that is removed. We showed that in a previous video. We also showed you removing the showed removing the shift rod out of the vehicle, and in an upcoming video we're going to show you replacement of that front shift rod bushing. Again, the motor's been removed, and we've drained the fluid out of the transaxle. And so the next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to remove the constant velocity joints, the two that connect to the transaxle. So we're heading underneath the vehicle. Okay, so here's a shot of constant velocity joint, and what we've done is we've rotated it to where two of the joints, or two of the bolts, are up above here and on the other side there, away from the camera. And then we set the parking brake so that I can torque on those and that joint won't rotate. You could also hold the wheel with one hand or something, but anyway, just another way to do that. So once two of those are loosened, let off the brake, rotate it to another two are up top, and set the brake and repeat the process. So that's what we'll do right now. We'll remove the constant velocity joints, and I'll do, each side while it's sitting in this position. I've set both of them that way at one time, so I just roll on my creeper and hit 4 of them at one time. Well, before you remove the constant velocity joint, I recommend that you clean the joint and the area around it, so as to limit the possibility of contaminating that joint once it's removed. And once a joint is clean and all of the bolts are loose, because I just loosen them up, then I just walk around and remove them. Just rotating them to where they're in the best position for accessibility and for removal. And that's all there is to it. Just basically walk around, do each of the bolts. Like I said, there's 6 of them. There's 3 pair of 2 that are held together with these little pieces right here. So you've got 3 pairs of 2 that are together with this little plate. So just continue to walk around and remove each bolt in turn. So here's a shot of the clutch cable disconnected from the shifting fork lever. And then there's one other spot where we have to disconnect that. I don't know if I can get the camera up in there or not. There's the other end of the clutch cable where it comes out of the tube. And there's 2 spots where it connects to the transaxle. We're going to disconnect those also. And then you got to remove this rear mount carriage bolt here. This is on this particular model, I don't know if they're all the same or not, but this is a 20mm socket to get this off. So everything's been detached from the transaxle front motor mount. Those nuts have been removed. So these 2 bolts are all that's left, and this is the last one. I just felt to let go. So you can see remove right there. There's a lock washer. And now we're free. So now it's just a matter of sliding this back. I've tried to do the minimal amount of work on this particular setup. We have a piece that goes right there. That's a cover that goes underneath the motor. We have a cooler that mounts underneath the transaxle. I've just, instead of disconnecting those things from the system, I just unbolted them from the the body or their other support so that I could lay them out of the way. So they're kind of, the cooler is out of the way now, but this piece has a bend to it and it wants to spring back. And so it's hopefully not going to cause me too much of a headache. But normally you wouldn't have these types of things to deal with that we have on this particular vehicle. So let me reposition the camera and we'll pull this thing out of the vehicle. Okay, I'm going to bring this towards me. I got to clear some items that we have on our particular vehicle here. Lots of plastic items in the way here. Once we're clear of the flanges here, pull it far enough forward to clear everything and then drop her down. Actually pulled it further forward because as it drops down, it drops back a little bit. So. There. My plastic cover out of the way. So there we have it. One slightly used transaxle. So let's move on to that information I promised you. And this is basically information regarding a 1969 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia. And it came with a 1500cc engine, 1493 to be exact, and it had a 7.5 to 1 compression ratio. And it put out 53 horsepower at 4,200 RPMs. Now this particular vehicle that we have is a 1974. And in 1974, it only put out 50 horsepower. So due to smog requirements, I believe, it actually lost 3 horsepower, which is a fair amount when you only had 50 or 53 to start with. So it put out 78 foot-pounds of torque at 2,600 RPMs. The horsepower, the 53 horsepower, was at 4,200 RPMs. And one of the things that we get asked a lot of time is, what did the engine weigh? Well, the dry weight of that engine was 250 pounds. The maximum and cruising speed. Now these statistics came from the Volkswagen factory manual. And their maximum cruising speed, and a lot of your Volkswagen or your German vehicles had a maximum cruising speed which were the same. In other words, the vehicle is designed to run at this speed all day long, unlike most American cars, which their maximum cruising speeds were one and the same. The Volkswagen, the maximum cruising speed was 83 miles an hour at 4,150 RPMs. Here's the speeds in the individual gears. First gear, and these are all at 4,000 RPMs. So first gear was 19 miles per hour at 4,000 RPMs. Second gear was 34 miles per hour. Third gear, 56. And fourth gear at 4,000 RPMs was 79 miles per hour. This particular Karmann Ghia with our Impulse 9 motor here, both on the dyno and on the road, it has been clocked at 94 miles an hour. The acceleration time through the gears, and this I don't have an exact spec for in the electric incarnation, but what it was with the factory gasoline engine, 0 to 31 miles per hour in 6 seconds. Not going to impress too many people with that one. 0 to 50 miles per hour in 13 seconds. And 0 to 62 miles per hour in a snoozing 22 seconds. And the fuel economy, and this is factory spec. This isn't an EPA rating or anything. This is what Volkswagen was able to measure exactly. I believe it was at 3/4 throttle, level ground, ambient air temperature of 78 degrees or something. Anyway, very scientific. 27.7 miles per gallon, which by today's standards is pretty much the average car. And so it's kind of interesting to look back at what powered the 1969 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia. And with that, we'll call it a wrap. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.